Good evening, UAW family. Tonight we're going to talk about the state of our union. Before we do that, I want to take a moment to honor those lives that we lost on September 11, 2001. When I think about September 11th, like all of you, I think back to where I was at the moment the unfortunate events unfolded and just leaving work that day, going and getting my kids out of school and knowing that the world was never going to be the same again. And today I think about all those people who were going to work that day and never came home. That should never happen, and we remember them and everyone who sacrificed and lost their lives on that day. Before we get into the heart of tonight's town hall, I want to begin where we always do, in solidarity with UAW members who are out on the picket lines. They're showing this country what it means to fight for dignity on the job. UAW Local 2325 members at the Goddard Riverside Law Project are on strike in New York City. They're demanding living wages and protections against impossible workloads. These are legal services workers who fight for tenants, for low-income families, and for justice, and now they're fighting for themselves. Members at Goddard are the last of nearly 2,000 legal services members at Local 2325 who, through their strong contract campaigns, have set a new standard in the sector across New York City. In Wisconsin, UAW Local 95 members at Mercy Health East Clinic are holding the line. This is a wall-to-wall unit made up of nurses, physical therapists, maintenance workers, and everybody in between. They're on strike in Janesville, Wisconsin, and they're demanding fair pay, safe staffing, and the ability to care for patients without being run into the ground. They're also fighting for affordable health care, and they work at a health care provider. Meanwhile, the president of Mercy Health made about $11.5 million in 2022. In fact, all the Mercy Health executives combined made nearly $23 million in 2022, all while claiming that the hospital's a nonprofit. Well, Mercy Health executives are certainly profiting, and even if the hospital's workers and patients aren't. And in Region 2B, in the Cincinnati area, over 600 members of UAW Local 647 are on strike against GE Aerospace. Our members at GE have been holding the line for almost 2 weeks. The bargaining committee down there has been working their asses off, and they're zeroing in on a deal as we speak. So before we go any further, let's send our love, our solidarity, and our support to all these strikers, because their fight is our fight. And when we stand up together, we've proved we can move mountains. A leader in our union who has helped us move some of those mountains is Vice President Laura Dickerson. And I want to congratulate her on her new role leading the Ford Department, as well as Agricultural Implement Department and the TOP departments. The delegates from Region 1A, where Laura served as Regional Director, will be voting tomorrow to elect a new director there. I also want to shout out the 180 members up at Black Lake attending the Contract Enforcement Conference, where they're sharpening their skills and learning new tactics for handling grievances and ensuring the companies comply with the contracts that our members win. Fighting for a great contract and enforcing a contract go hand in hand in making sure our members get what they deserve. So we started with the shout outs on those picket lines, but tonight I want to zoom out to the big picture. This weekend will mark 2 years since our 2023 stand-up strike. We made history as a union with that fight, but we got a hell of a lot more to do and a hell of a lot more to win at the Big Three and beyond. Our Big Three contract expiration in 2028 is less than 1,000 days away now. So it's time to talk about how far we've come and how far we have left to go. How we're going to fight differently so we can win differently. And how we're going to finally win justice for what the working class lost in the Great Recession and before that, starting with retiree pensions and health care. I want to start with one image, one that I believe is the most important chart in America in 2025. It's a simple chart, but it tells the whole story about everything that's wrong with our country and our economy. On one line, you'll see productivity. Since 1948, American workers have been producing more and more value. Our productivity is through the roof. An average full-time worker today is creating 250% more value for their employers than a worker did in 1948. We work harder, we work smarter, and we generate more wealth than any generation of workers in U.S. history. On another line, you see wages. And for a while, wages kept up with productivity. Unions had the power to make sure that when workers produced more, they also got paid more. And that's how it should be. That's how a fair economy should work. But starting around 1980, that line broke. Productivity kept climbing and wages flatlined. And on the third line, as you can see, as productivity climbed and wages flatlined, union membership began to crash. 1 in 3 workers belonged to a union in the late 1950s. Today, only about 1 in 10 workers are in a union. When corporations went on the attack, union membership went down and wages went down with it. But that productivity line kept going up. So where did all those productivity gains, all that value that we created with our hands and our minds, where did it go? The working class didn't see rising productivity get rewarded with more money in our pockets. Instead, those profits went to the top, to the billionaire class, to the people who never stepped foot on a factory floor but think they own everything that we build. We live in a country where the richest 1% of humanity now owns more wealth than the bottom 95% of the world's population combined. Where the wealthiest 10% of Americans own 93% of all stocks. And where the average retirement savings for the bottom half of Americans is zero. Zero. That's why this fight, our fight for retirement security, is so critical. That's why the battles we've waged over the last 2 years matter so much. And that's why May Day 2028 will be the defining moment of our generation. This week marks 2 years since the stand-up strike began. And that strike changed everything. Our union did things differently. We told the companies that expiration dates are deadlines, not reference points. UAW leadership didn't shake hands with the CEOs as we'd done in the past. We shook hands with the members. We ended blackout bargaining and went public with our demands and gave live updates about what was happening during negotiations. And we launched a communication strategy that turned our contract fight into a referendum on corporate greed. And it worked. 75% of Americans said they stood with us against the big three. That's unprecedented. And I said back then that we had to eliminate the word can't from our vocabulary. Because for decades, we were told we can't fight for retirees. We can't win back cost of living allowance. We can't demand massive wage increases. We can't end wage tiers. We did all those things. And we won life-changing wage increases and cost of living allowance adjustments. Just this week, Stellantis workers got another raise. GM workers will see theirs next week. Ford workers in October. And that brings the total wage increases to 17% since the ratification. That's about $6 an hour more for production workers and $8 an hour more for skilled workers. And on top of that, Big Three workers are already earning more than $1 an hour in cost of living allowance protections against inflation. That's thousands of dollars a year locked in to protect our wages. And at the end of the agreement, that cost of living allowance is folded into our base wages, increasing our lifetime earnings. We also fought for retirees and won annual bonuses for the first time in decades. We shortened the progression to top pay from 8 years to 3. We increased the 401k contribution. We won a new holiday and a $1.50 tool allowance for the trades. But most of all, we showed that when workers stand up together, we can defy the decades of corporate propaganda. We can defy the talking heads who said we were finished, and we can defy the politicians who wrote us off. We showed that when workers stand up together, we can break the cycle of concessions. We can break the fear that held us back for generations, and we can break the chains that corporate America put around us. We showed that when workers stand up together, we can win what they told us was impossible. Raises, cost of living allowance, money for retirees, and an end to wage tiers. And most importantly, we showed that when workers stand up together, we can move mountains. We can change the balance of power in this country. That's the legacy of the stand-up strike. And that's the foundation for everything that has come since and everything that lies ahead. But here's the thing. The stand-up strike wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Out of that fight, we created something else new, the Department of Bargaining Strategies. Because we weren't just going to keep that playbook locked up for Big Three, we want to take it everywhere in our union, in every sector, and we did. We took it to Daimler Truck, where we won record wage increases, profit sharing for the first time ever, and cost of living allowance. We took it to Rolls-Royce, where we ended tiers, secured cost of living allowance with a roll-in, and delivered historic raises. We took it to Cornell University, where we ended tiers. We won the first ever cost of living allowance in higher education and secured big wage gains for the campus workers. We took it to General Dynamics Electric Boat, where we won record wage gains and forced a major defense contractor to sit down with its workers in a way it never had before. Every one of those fights, every contract campaign we've ran and contract we won had ripple effects. Non-union employers scrambled to hand out raises and benefits, hoping to keep the workers from joining a union. That's why I've said when I campaigned for this job and from day one as president, bargaining strong contracts go hand in hand with organizing. And speaking of organizing, let's talk about the breakthroughs we've made together. For years, people told us we couldn't organize in the South, that it was impossible, that the laws were stacked against us, that the culture was too hostile. Well, we did it. We won a blowout election at Volkswagen in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and now those workers are fighting for a first contract. Volkswagen, like every non-union employer, is dragging its feet. They're slow-walking negotiations, hoping workers get discouraged. But our members aren't backing down. They're doubling down. And you're going to be hearing a lot more about that in the near future. And just last month, we won a massive organizing victory at Blue Oval SK in Kentucky. Ford and SK tried every dirty trick in the book, delaying the election by 8 months, firing union leaders, threatening and intimidating workers. They failed. Workers stood strong, and they voted for the union. Now Blue Oval SK is trying to use their army of corporate lawyers to delay certification, to flood the unit with workers outside the bargaining unit to try to tie us up in court. That's who we're dealing with. We're not going to let them break the will of our members. All told, in the past 2.5 years, we have organized 50 new shops. That's translated to about 75,000 workers that have joined our union in just over 2 years. 75,000. Let me put that another way. Our union has grown by close to 20% over the last 2 years. In fact, in 2024, 4 of the 5 biggest private sector union victories in the entire country were with the UAW. And in 2025, it's the same thing. We are again leading the way with 4 of the 5 largest private sector union victories. And when it comes to the public sector, we're also leading the way nationally. Just last week, 7,200 research and administrative workers at the University of California voted to join the UAW. Our higher education organizers have set the goal of organizing 25,000 higher education workers in 2025, and I believe we're going to make that happen. Our union is growing at a tremendous speed, and that's not an accident. That's a strategy, and that's putting our money where our mouth is. That's power. But UAW family, let's go back to the chart I showed you earlier. We organize because when that line for union membership goes down, the entire working class suffers. When that line for union membership goes down, it doesn't just mean stagnant wages. It also means lost benefits. It also means tears. It means little or no retirement security when you're too old to work and too young to die. It means whatever the company wants you to do, they can probably get away with it. In the Big Three, it meant we gave up retirement benefits that generations before us fought and even died for. With financial trouble on the horizon, the Big Three came to us in 2007 and demanded that we give up our pensions and post-retirement health care for anyone who wasn't hired yet. We lost those benefits that had set the standard for the entire working class. We could have had more of a backbone, but it just wasn't. We had grown weak, and our membership had declined. At one point, we represented the vast majority of auto workers in this country. It wasn't just numbers, it was power. The reality is that the more workers are a part of our movement, the more powerful we get. That's the lesson of this chart. That's why everything we do, the strikes, the contracts, the organizing breakthroughs, it's about one thing: building power. If we want to restore dignity and stability for working class people, then we have to grow our movement. Our goal is to win retirement health care back for every single worker. Our goal is to give every worker a pension that isn't at risk of evaporating when the market crashes. These are ambitious goals. In 2023, before the stand-up strike, we put together a brilliant team of researchers and strategists to decide which plants to target and keep the companies guessing. When we return to the table in 2028, we're going to be even more prepared with an even more ambitious plan. But even the best strategy in the world can't win us back retiree health care or pensions if we don't have the raw power to force the companies to say yes when they want to say no. That's why we moved our Big Three contract expirations to midnight on April 30th, 2028, so we can strike on May the 1st, May Day, International Workers' Day. We didn't do that by accident. We did it with the hope and belief that other unions and working class people will join us, that together we can turn May Day into a national day of reckoning. The fight can't be with one company in our union. It can't be one sector of our union. It can't even be just one union. It has to be all of us striking together. If more union workers stand up together, the more power we will all have to win what we're owed. And the billionaire class is on one side, the working class is on the other. And the fight ahead is about who will control the wealth that we create and the society that we live in. And make no mistake, the billionaire class is not going to give up power willingly. They are on an endless pursuit of profit, no matter the cost. They will try to divide us with tears. They'll try to divide us by race, by gender, by who we love, by who we worship, by what language we speak, or what bathroom we use. Anything to keep us from uniting in a common cause as a working class. And when that's not enough, they'll use their power in government to lock in an undemocratic system that keeps working people on the sidelines. But where corporations seek to produce profit, our movements must produce leaders. Not just in the shop, not just in a union hall, but in society. That's why our fight is bigger than wages. It's bigger than benefits. It's about power. Who has it, who doesn't, and what we're going to do to change it. So what's that mean in practice? It means we have to continue to organize the unorganized. Millions of workers wanted to join a union, and we have to bring them into our movement. It means we must rebuild our own union strength from the shop floor up. Every work site needs strong leaders who can stand up to the company at a moment's notice, whether it's to enforce the contract or win a better one. It means we have to rebuild our power to strike. It means we must revive the strike, not just as a weapon to win better contracts, but as a school for class struggle. When workers strike, we learn how much power we really have. Some of our members want us to stop being political. But if we're going to win things as big as pensions or post-retirement health care, we can't ignore politics. The answer is not to become an appendage of one political party, but to build an independent working class force. Our politics as a union should be rooted in bold, ambitious demands. Our four core things: wages, health care, retirement security, controlling our time. And we should hold every politician accountable to those things. And it means we have to elect more of our own. Not millionaires who've never worried about paying a bill, not corporate stooges. We need to elect working class people who know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. And it means we have to deepen our ties into our communities. Because our fight is not just in the shop. It's in the neighborhoods we live in, the schools our kids attend, the hospitals we depend on, and the planet that we all share. That's the work ahead of us. That's the road to May Day 2028. When I ran for this office, I said we need to put humanity first. And I said we need to get back to the basics, back to the issues that matter most to working people having a dignified life. So the question for us is, what unites us as a working class? In my walk, I've found that there's four core issues that every working class person agrees on and is ready to stand up for, from the workplace to the ballot box. And those four core issues are simple: wages, health care, retirement, and time. The first one of those is wages. And the point of that is this: no matter what work you do, no matter what job you have, no matter where it is, you should earn enough to live a decent quality of life, a wage that lets you pay the bills, support a family, and have dignity. And the second thing of those four things is health care. We live in the richest nation in the history of the world, yet we rank dead last among rich industrial nations when it comes to meeting the health needs of our people. Health care should not be tied to whether your boss is feeling generous. In the richest country in the history of the world, no one should have to choose between seeing a doctor and feeding their family. No one should have to go into debt to pay their medical bills. Our healthcare system robs workers of dignity and weakens our power at the bargaining table. Healthcare should be a human right for every worker. The third thing is retirement security. Our country right now is in a retirement insecurity crisis. Last year alone, we hit what we call peak 65. More Americans turned age 65 this year than at any time in our nation's history. And the bottom 50% of Americans have no retirement savings. That is a crisis. After a lifetime of work, you shouldn't have to retire into poverty. You shouldn't have to retire into fear. You should retire with dignity, with health care, and with a pension that allows you to live. And the last of these four things is our time, getting our time back. You know, our time is our most valuable commodity on earth. Our lives aren't meant to be consumed by work. And as we talk, technology is advancing faster than ever. You know, Walter Reuther once had a famous saying talking about technology: we must master technology, not let it master us. Technology could be used to shorten the work week, to guarantee jobs for everyone, to help us live more fulfilling lives and more productive lives. If advances in technology are only going to make billionaires richer while everything gets worse for the working class, then we have failed. That's why we have to fight for shorter work weeks, for the same or more pay, for more time with our families, for balance in our lives, for contract language we can enforce that protects our bodies, our families, our lives off the job. So wages, health care, retirement, security, and time, those are the foundation of living a dignified life. And it matters to every working class person, union or not. And this is the foundation we'll stand on when we walk into bargaining in 2028. We've won historic gains, but our fight's not even close to being finished. Because today in our union, we still have tiers in retirement. If you were hired in before 2008, you have a pension. You have retiree health care. But if you were hired after 2008, you don't. You think about that. Almost 70% of the big three workforce alone does not have a pension or retirement health care. Two workers doing the same job side by side, shoulder to shoulder. One's promised a dignified retirement, and the other's left to fend for themselves. That's not solidarity, it's not justice, and it's not the future of the UAW. Ending retirement tiers will be the defining fight of 2028. This is about leaving things better for the next generation. The generations before us fought and sacrificed to win pensions and health care. I remember my grandfather talking about being on strike at Chrysler back in the early 1950s for 110 days to win a pension. We owe it to the next generation to win that back. This is about fairness. If you sacrifice years of your life to an industry or to a company, then you deserve to retire in dignity no matter when you were hired. This is about power. Because every dollar stolen from retirement security didn't just vanish. It went straight into the pockets of the CEOs and Wall Street. That's the broken system we're here to fix. I remember during the Big Three stand-up strike, the corporate media said we were going to wreck the economy. And I remember telling them, we're not going to wreck the economy, we're going to wreck their economy. The economy that works for the benefit of the few at the expense of the many. An economy that leaves workers without living wages, without adequate health care, without retirement security, and without time for our family and our friends. Take a look at this slide. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the billionaire economy. As you can see, between 2015 and 2025, the Big Three made over $200 billion in profits. And you know what they did with those profits? They showered them on the rich shareholders and the corporate executives. Over that same last decade, the Big Three have used $110 billion of those profits for stock buybacks and dividends. Who does that benefit? And why do we accept this as a society? And let's be clear about this. It isn't just the Big Three. It's the same story at General Electric, at Lockheed Martin, Caterpillar, John Deere, Daimler Truck, Case New Holland, Cleveland Cliffs, Dana, Lear. In fact, our union represents workers at 26 publicly traded companies across 5 sectors. And since 2015, UAW members at those companies have produced $566 billion in profits. And those same 26 companies have distributed $530 billion in stock buybacks and dividends. That's over $500 billion. That's how much it costs to build our country's entire interstate highway system in today's dollars. And remember, 93% of all shares are owned by the top 10% of the wealthiest families in the United States. The majority of Americans have no investments or very few investments in the stock market. UAW members at these 26 companies, which represent auto, ag imp, aerospace, defense, and IPS, produced $566 billion in profits, and 94% of those profits, 94% of those profits were used for stock buybacks and dividends so the rich can get richer. That is outrageous. That is the economy we need to break. And we have a plan to break it, and that plan is May Day 2028. And let me be crystal clear on this. On May Day 2028, the UAW will not settle for anything less than retiree health care and a real pension. UAW family, I want to close with this. 2 years ago, they said the UAW was irrelevant. They said we couldn't win. They said we couldn't organize, and they said we couldn't strike. And here we are 2 years later, leading the labor movement, not just in this country, but across the world. We have moved mountains, and we got a lot more mountains to move. And May Day 2028 will be our defining moment. Just as the Great Depression generation built the UAW, just as the post-war generation built the middle class, it's up to our generation to build a new future. This fight is bigger than one contract, it's bigger than one union, and it's bigger than one industry. This is a fight for the soul of the working class. And we've shown what's possible when we stand up together. And now we have to make it bigger. When we stand up together, when we fight together, we will move mountains, just like the generation that went through the Great Depression. This is our generation's defining moment. What we do or don't do will affect generations to come. Our power is collective, our mission is justice, and our time is now. So I want to thank you, UAW family. We've done a hell of a lot, but we got a lot more to do with the membership at the driver's seat. So I'm going to take some questions. We've had a lot of questions that came in, a lot of questions submitted. We had over 100 questions, actually, about pensions, retiree health care, and retirement security. And I've just walked you through what our plan is. But just a number of questions alone tells me that this issue is an issue that affects everybody, and not just in our union, everywhere. And the next couple of years, it's about turning all this anger into action. We've got to get organized, and we got to be ready to fight like hell. So there's these next two questions I'm gonna take together. Peter Higbee from Local 652 asked, why do you keep supporting the Democrats when President Trump is the one that's trying to get companies to come back to America? And Jacob Jeffries from Local 2178 asked, tariffs are decimating manufacturing in America. Why do you still support Trump in spite of his anti-union positions? And, you know, there is no UAW political party. We aren't Democrats. We aren't Republicans. We are trade unionists. Our job is not to play party politics or pick a side we like or make friends with certain politicians. Our job is to stick to our values, stick to our issues, and be vocal about those things. And we've been very loud about where we disagree with the Trump administration, but we've also been loud about where we agree. And we said from day one, I've always said, we'll call balls and strikes. And I want to be clear. We agree with the Trump administration on strategic tariffs. We all know, we've all lived this in auto. Free trade has been a disaster. When NAFTA went into place in 1994, we've lost 90,000 manufacturing facilities in America. Over 5 million jobs evaporated, gone. And the big promise was wages in Mexico were going to come up and our wages would come up. But what we've seen since NAFTA came into play was wages in Mexico are even lower today than they were before NAFTA passed, and the standard of living in America went down. Right now, we got members at Mack Truck, Local 677, who we've been working with, pushing the Trump administration to open a tariff investigation for the heavy truck industry. And the company is planning to build a new plant as we speak in Mexico after lying during negotiations about investing a plant in Pennsylvania. So if you want to stand with these workers, sign their petition today at uaw.us/MAC Solidarity. We've also got a lot of questions from a lot of members at John Deere, where the company's doing layoffs and trying to outsource a great American product. And again, we've been working with the White House to include the agricultural implement workers like at Deere, Caterpillar, and Case New Holland in their tariff regulations. And we're going to keep pushing and keep working with the administration. As many of you may know and may not know, the Trump administration announced they were going to do an investigation under Section 232 to look at this heavy truck and agricultural implement work. And so, we expect good things to come from that. And so, that's the thing. These products are all being sold in the U.S. right now, and they should be made in the U.S. And, that's the thing about this. When one person says, why are we taking one side and why are we supporting this side? I mean, this is what's interesting. People say we flip-flopped and all this stuff. We haven't flip-flopped. We've been very clear about what our issues are and what we stand for. And because we work with the administration on tariffs, doesn't mean we flip-flopped. It means we agree on something we've asked both parties to support for decades, and no one was willing to do it. But, there are things we don't agree on with this administration, such as, just plucking people from the streets, terrorizing immigrants, tax cuts for the rich, destroying the labor board, destroying OSHA, gutting Medicaid, eliminating the Department of Education, breaking the contracts for 1 million federal workers. These actions are disgusting, and they're anti-union and they're anti-worker. So we've got a lot more work to do. We've received a lot of questions from members asking for help in their contract negotiations. So, looking at a few of those questions, we heard from Dari Newman, Local 2069 at Volvo Truck in Virginia. Stuart Payson at Spirit Aerosystems in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Local 952, and Kurt Rosner at John Deere in Ankeny, Iowa, Local 450. And that's the thing, when we talk about these contract fights, after the Big Three strike, we created the Department of Bargaining Strategies, and this is a new department that's focused on running contract campaigns in every sector and every region of our union. So we're taking those strategies that worked during the stand-up strike and bringing them to our aerospace industry, our heavy truck and defense, higher ed, and everywhere we have, every sector. We want to use this as a roadmap everywhere we bargain. So, we can't do it fast enough, and we're trying to get it everywhere. But, we have to have member buy-in, and we have to have local leaders buy in, and we're going to work that through our regional directors, and we've seen a lot of success in doing that. So we've run, like I said, major contract campaigns at Daimler Truck, at General Dynamics, at Cornell University, and at Rolls-Royce. So if you and your workers are ready to fight, ask your local president or your regional director to get to the Department of Bargaining Strategies and get us involved. This is how we win. We do it together. And we need to be public about our issues, creative about our bargaining, and fired up and ready to fight for what we deserve no matter what sector it is. Another question is from Chris Salisbury, Local 22, Deuce. He says, currently, I'm an electrician in the body shop at GM, Factory Zero, formerly an electrician at Jefferson North Assembly Plant. First, let me preface by saying I have no filter between my brain and my mouth. Hey, brother, amen, I joined the club. Why are we not addressing a glaring issue right now, and that is vehicle pricing and affordability? That's his statement or question. And he says, I'm sorry, sir, but I fail to see how charging $70,000 to north of $100,000 for average mass-produced vehicles can sustain itself. Chris, I completely agree with you. And we've been saying this leading into the Big Three strike, and ever since. We've been saying this for years, that the companies are price gouging consumers. In the 3 years prior to our 2023 stand-up strike, the average price of vehicles went up 35%. It wasn't due to wage increases or anything that we had bargained for. Those prices were simply two things: corporate greed and consumer price gouging, plain and simple. And these companies they're way too often, it's throughout the whole history, they're short-sighted. And we can't only be concerned with our own contract and our own paycheck. You know, we should be asking questions about how they run these companies, about where the profits are going, and about what we're building and why. And I think those charts I showed are very indicative of what the problem is. You know, when the big three alone made over $200 billion in a decade, and over $110 billion of that went to shareholders and executives, we know what the problem is. At 26 companies we represent in 5 sectors, that slide showed $560 billion in profits, and $530 billion of that, 94% of those profits, went to shareholders and executives. That's why our communities are suffering, and that's why workers went backwards for decades, and that's what we got to stop. When our union was at our strongest, we called on the big three to open their books. We talked about advocating for different products, and we called for wage increases with no price increases. So that's where we got to get back to, and it's a great question, and I'm glad that our members are speaking about this. Philip Hargrove, a member of Local 140, says, hello, I'm at Warren Truck Assembly Plant. I'm on indefinite layoff. It's been close to a year now, and I was wondering if and when we will be called back to work. You know, we've received a lot more questions from Stellantis members worried about their job security, questions about Warren Truck, also about the reopening of Belvedere and layoffs at other locations. And, you know, I'll provide you with latest numbers. On February 1st of this year, we had over 3,200 members at Stellantis that were on indefinite layoff thanks to the devastating rampage of Carlos Tavares, the CEO that we went to work on and stood up together and got rid of him. You know, we shit-canned Carlos, thank God. But it's going to take time to fix those things and fix the damage he's done. Today, the number of people laid off is under 2,000, so we've made progress, but it's not enough. You know, it's not enough until every single worker is back to work, and it's not enough till we're growing and hiring people. So, you know, we're doing big and small things to get our members back to work. You know, we've been paying attention to the details. We've been closely monitoring Belvedere to make sure the company follows our agreement at the end of the Keep the Promise campaign. And we're also monitoring minimum headcount, you know, at Mopar to make sure that the agreement's followed. You know, and I'll be honest, I don't like retirement incentives because I think ultimately it can decrease our headcount. But, you know, we have been negotiating those to create more spots for lower seniority workers who are laid off. We also have a bigger strategy around supporting targeted auto tariffs with the Trump administration. And that paid huge dividends at GM, you know, where they did the right thing. GM chose to do the right thing, invested over $5 billion in product coming back to the United States. Unfortunately, with Stellantis, their leadership's still trying to lobby their way out of committing to bringing work back. We've been working every day. Our team's been meeting with the company. They've you know, made a lot of promises, you know, in conversation, but it ain't on paper, and they haven't announced anything yet. And until they do, we're going to keep pressing. And so, you know, they're trying to lobby their way out of it and walk it back. So we hope they get their head out of their ass and do the right thing and create more jobs right here in this country, the people that created this company. So, you know, those are all things we're doing. That's how we can really get more product and jobs here with Stellantis. It's time for them to get moving and start investing in response to the tariffs. Jim Schock, a member at Local 211, has a question. Why are UAW members having to work mandatory overtime instead of adding people to the workforce? Look, let's be real about this, and we all know this, and it's a shame, and it's something we're always going to have to fight. These companies want to own our lives. They want to get every second they can out of you, no matter the cost to your family, to your body, to your quality of life. You know, in the 2023 negotiations, we put the 32-hour work week on the table. And it started a national conversation. And it wasn't meant to work 32 hours for less pay, you know. And I have to be honest, we didn't win major gains on work-life balance that we want to see. That's something else we got to address going forward. You know, and one problem is the company, you know, trampling on our contracts. You know, we've seen plant managers just ignore language that protects our time off. We need to enforce our contracts. We've had some success at places like GM and Wentzville Assembly, where the committee and the GM department and our department went to work, And, we got serious overtime violations and forced overtime reversed. We did that, again, by the membership, the local leadership, and the international working together to put pressure on the company. But, another problem is the contract language. We had a lot of things to fix in 2023, and as I said, we still got a lot more going forward. Some of our contracts have emergency overtime language or other language that's too vague, and it makes it easy for the company to force extra work without a real emergency. That's been a repeated problem in a lot of places, specifically right now at Toledo Jeep and Stellantis. And so, the President's office is in conversation with our big three departments about what solutions might look like, and we have to make real improvements to our overtime language in 2028. But we look forward to hearing from the membership on this, and we know these are things we got to fix going forward. Finally, look, I just want to take a moment to say thank you to everybody who tuned in tonight and are taking an active role in our union. I'm honored to be your UAW president, but let's be real. The UAW isn't me. It isn't your International Executive Board. It's not Solidarity House. You are the membership, and the membership makes this union. That's one thing that we decided as a board when the election ended, to put politics aside, that the election was over, and that we have to put the membership first, and that's what we've been striving to do. And when you get organized in a common cause, and we all get organized together, we've showed there's nothing we can't accomplish. We got a hell of a lot more in front of us, a hell of a lot more to do, and I look forward to standing up for even bigger and better things as we move forward. So let's just keep focusing on the great things we're doing. We've done more in 2.5 years than we've done in the last 2 decades. And, we got a lot more to do, so let's keep focused on the mission, and let's keep moving forward. So thank you.